All right, you ready?
There we go. Yep.
Well, hello. This is Jim Morgan. I am with Fishers Historical Society, and we have somebody I've been very excited about getting in here to talk to us today. Eric Powell is with you can describe it exactly, but it's the Nickel Plate Heritage Railroad. Is that the proper term?
That is
And
absolutely correct.
when you consider that Fishers was uh, initially Fisher's switch because it was a train station is all it was, and that is why Fisher's exists today. So the nickel plate is the cornerstone of Fisher's being here. So is Emily our other speaker here? Eric,
I don't see her on
I,
yet.
I bet Emily Reynolds is our speaker, right?
Yeah, Emily is my partner in crime for this. She
Okay,
is
I
the
just moved her
executive
up to
director. Yeah.
panelist. There he is. Hi, Emily.
Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for asking.
So well, I've seen you before.
Yes,
So, yeah, my wife and I have taken the Valentine's Day trip a couple times.
Excellent.
So it's a lot of fun. So Emily Reynolds is also with the organization. And I'll let you guys introduce yourselves and kind of introduce who the Heritage Railroad is.
Emily, since you're executive director, do you want to start with that?
sure. So my name's Emily Reynolds. I'm the executive director for Nickle Play Heritage Railroad. I've been here almost 5 years now. And so I will let Eric kind of jump in after his introductions and talk a little bit about the history. And then we thought we would give a brief overview of who we are now.
Excellent.
Yeah. I am a board member of the Nickel Plate Heritage Railroad. Been involved for, gosh, I guess coming up on 4 years now. Hard to believe it's been that long. 3, 4 years, something like that.
You were my first person I added.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, there you go. So yeah, it must be 4 years then that we're getting close to here because it's been a lot of fun watching this organization grow. My background is I work for a company called Ports of Indiana right now. Yes, Indiana actually does have ports. You know, we're not just corn and highways. We do have ports. But I do have a railroading background and also worked out at the Motor Speedway and for a number of years. And so, and history has always been kind of a narrative of something I've been interested in anywhere I've worked, and also just from a personal standpoint. So it's a pleasure to come and talk about the nickel plate and its history. And Emily can certainly touch on what we're doing these days. And I mean, the great thing about this railroad corridor, even though I mean, sadly, the rails don't run through Fishers anymore, but it's still just an incredible asset for Hamilton County. And I would say for from a rail standpoint, what we have from going from Noblesville north, it can't be any more exciting, and the future can't be brighter than what it is right now. So, a lot of things we can talk about in that regard too.
So, I mean, do you have any of the history of the nickel plate as far as, going back into time, getting it, up to speed? So, yeah, Emily can
Yeah,
tell us what's going on now, but yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I get. Yeah, we are here for a history discussion after all. So, of course, yeah, I've done a lot of research on the railroad in the last few years, and there was things. I mean, I would be what you'd call a rail enthusiast, or insert other nicknames for people that love trains, but I've been kind of an amateur historian when it comes to the rails for going back since I was a kid. And there was a lot of things that I've just uncovered recently about this rail line that honestly I wasn't that aware of before. This really was a pioneer railroad that went through Fishers. And it was actually the second railroad that was chartered in Indiana. A lot of people are familiar with the Madison and Indianapolis Railroad as the first railroad that was chartered in Indiana, and that was by the legislature, and that ran from Madison to Indianapolis, obviously. But what I didn't know about our railroad that runs through Fishers and Noblesville these days is that It was actually the second railroad chartered, and it was in 1846. So this railroad was chartered exactly 160 years ago that runs through our communities. And it was basically considered an extension of the Madison in Indianapolis. It was like I say, chartered in 1846. Trains started running through Fishers in 1851. So it was very even as railroads go, it was very early on in the technology and things like that. And it was designed to run from Indianapolis up to Peru and connect with the Wabash and Erie Canal in Peru. So we weren't even talking about a big, transportation rail network. The whole purpose of this was to connect with a railroad that went from the Ohio River to Indianapolis, and then this railroad was going to go from Indianapolis up to the canal. So we were still in the canal days when this thing was built, which to me is pretty amazing as far as just kind of illustrating the story of how old it is. Um, it wasn't in 1871. The railroad, it was called the Indianapolis and Peru, or excuse me, Peru and Indianapolis Railroad, bought another line, and then it ended up the line actually went from Indianapolis all the way to Michigan City, and that's the way it was for many years. If you can believe it, there were depending on the day of the week, I think it was every day except Sunday. There was actually 6 passenger trains a day that went through Fishers, stopped at Fishers, of course, to pick up passengers. And that was for a lot of its history. Um, passenger trains ran through Fishers until 1932. Of course, the Great Depression killed off a lot of trains along with a lot of other businesses and things like that. But there was if you can imagine a day when there was passenger trains running through Fishers, going down Indianapolis or going up to Michigan City on a daily basis, it's just hard to imagine trains running like that. But we certainly had that available to us. Trying to think of some other notes here real quick. Something else that's kind of interesting about passenger service that ran on that line. I actually have I should have grabbed it so I could show it to everybody. But there is I have a couple copies of flyers for excursion trains that ran from Indianapolis up to Michigan City. They would run on weekends a lot, like on a Friday and Saturday. I mean, you never saw these things run on Sundays because I just assume everybody it was just assumed everybody was going to stay at home and observe the Sabbath or whatever it was. But the trains never ran on Sundays, but they'd run a lot of like Friday, Saturday excursions up to Michigan City and stop at every little station along the way. So Fishers was included. So people could go up to like the dunes and hang out on the beaches and things like that. One of the posters I have even suggests that you could go to the prison up in Michigan City and watch the prisoners, which I'm thinking I'm probably not going to get my wife and two or three kids and get on the train to go up to the prison, but that's just me. I don't know. Other people maybe that was a great idea, but that was back in like the 1880s, up around 1900, that they would run these excursions, and or you could get on a train and go down to Indianapolis and shop, which I'm sure back in the day, we're talking 100 and 100 and plus years before I-69 was built and all the roads. So that was a big deal to be able to go down to the big city and shop. So, it was very much, I guess the point I'm trying to make is that it was very much a important part of society and very much an important part of just the culture that people even on the little nickel plate road that ran through Fishers, there's trains running every day that took people to all different places. And you could get on a train at those places and then go take a train up to, if you wanted to get to Chicago or get to New York, you could take the train up to northern Indiana. You'd have to get off at a station somewhere up there and then get on another train that would take you somewhere else. But it was truly the outlet for life. In this.
Well, my own family, when they moved to Fishers, they called it Delaware at the time, but when they moved to Fishers, I don't know that they took the nickel plate. I don't know. Okay. I don't have that record, but my great grandfather drove a couple mules and a flatbed wagon, but he put all the family on the train, and this was in 1935. So they went from Stiles, South or whatever, southern Missouri to here. So
Wow.
so
Yeah.
And then their farm ran along, the nickel plate ran right along their west border.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's interesting to if you ever I don't know if you ever looked at like old Sanborn maps, like the Sanborn fire maps. I was looking at some of those actually last night, and it was interesting to me that just some of the businesses that were in. I mean, unfortunately, I mean, Fishers it was so small back then. You're talking like early 20th century. There was no Sanborn maps that didn't even exist because I mean, I think beyond like a grain elevator or something like that, little grain facility, there wasn't anything else in the town. But
Well, there were two taverns because they got
okay,
famous
okay, two
because
taverns, yeah.
because a rail stop sometimes did not have the most highbrow people getting off. Okay.
This is true.
And there was a gunfight between these two taverns that was part of this whole process that actually made national news that it was on, and they were the two taverns on either side of the railroad track. They're on 116th Street.
I would kind of feel sorry for the engineer or the conductor or anybody on a passenger train and them getting caught in the crossfire of that. That'd be less than fun.
Yeah,
So
that would be a lot of fun, wouldn't it?
yeah, not so much. So not that's something I need to learn more about
I'll
then.
tell you what. One of the members of our board, the Fishers Historical Society, Robert Bowling, wrote a book called Wicked Fishers, and it's got that story in it.
Good to know. I'm gonna
Yeah,
have to check that out. So for sure. Um, that's hilarious. Well, it's not funny. It's funny, not funny, I guess. But
yeah.
that's a crazy story. So
It's one of the
um,
folklores of Fishers.
yeah, indeed. So and like I said, you had the Peru and Indianapolis Railroad is what founded it, and then founded the rail line through town, and then I mean, railroads were always merging and things like that. And after a while, it became the Indianapolis, Peru, and Chicago, and then the railroad called the Lake Erie and Western owned it for a while, and then the reason why it's the Nickel Plate Heritage Railroad now is because the Nickel Plate Road, which was another railroad that it was formed over time, a lot of different mergers and things like that. But 1922 is when our rail line became officially part of the Nickel Plate Road. And interesting part about it, going back to what I mentioned with the age of the railroad, going all the way back to being built in 1851. It was actually the oldest part of the Nickel Plate Road. So you could say that anybody who's a rail fan out there or you're interested in trains and history and stuff, this line actually is the oldest part of the Nickel Plate system, which was a big railroad. I mean, it ran all the way from like Buffalo, New York, and Pittsburgh, all the way out to St. Louis and Chicago and Peoria. So our little piece of railroad has a pretty significant part of history when it comes to the nickel plate as well. Um, and something else that I think is kind of cool about this is that it was just a little piece of railroad that ran from Michigan, from Indianapolis to Michigan City. Yet they ran trains. The nickel plate would run trains, especially like in the 1920s, 1930s, on like precision time. Easy for me to say that. I mean, it was, think of like FedEx quality service back in the 1920s, 30s, 40s. There was trains that would come out of Indianapolis at the same time every day, freight trains, and they would haul like Marmon automobiles through Fishers and Noblesville and auto parts for Chrysler and Ford. And, there was a lot of really important freight that ran along this corridor that would get moved up to like northern Indiana, and then it would connect with other railroads up there, just like a sorting facility you have for like UPS or FedEx. I mean, these trains would take these cars out of Indianapolis every night and take them up to another point, and then interchange with another railroad, and then go all over the country. But as somebody that worked for I obviously I worked for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, like I mentioned, for a long time, and the Marmon automobile, Marmon, obviously the Marmon Wasp was the first car to win the Indianapolis 500. And, there was Marmons moving through Hamilton County on the nickel plate every night for a number of years, at least as long as they were building cars. I forget when Marmon went under, but it was sometime during the Depression. But And then, you had other like meat that was processed. You had Kingans and other meat processors in Indianapolis that would, be processing fresh meats and stuff like that every night. Those trains full of, steak and this and that and everything else going in refrigerator cars through Hamilton County, of all places to go all over the country. So it was, it was it's interesting to note that there was a lot of local companies in Hamilton County that relied on the nickel plate to ship their goods, or bring in raw materials and then ship the finished products out. But there was a lot of freight that moved through from Indianapolis as well. So, from the passenger standpoint, from the freight and things like that, it really, it's hard to imagine. I mean, we're as an excursion service now. Once upon a time, this railroad was really an important corridor from a commercial standpoint as well.
Well, what's funny too is we had previously on one of our Fisher's History chats, I had David Highway on here, who was a longtime county historian.
Mm-hmm.
But he did a thing on the initial transportation, for the state. And so he was going into some of
Yeah,
these other trains and the canals and what have you, but he was really going all the way back to prehistoric, and he was showing, elk trails and bison trails and what
yeah,
have you. And I'm looking at the map of his prehistoric, trails, and I'm
yeah.
going, that looks like 69, that's 74, this is, 65. And he goes, yeah, kind of. So those trails eventually became what we know today.
Isn't that kind of amazing how history just kind of has a thing of, I mean, yeah, you can definitely see the connections a lot,
Mhm.
a
Yeah.
lot of times, and how people moved. I mean, whether it's there's certainly a lot of wagon trails out there that turned into highways or railroads, and there's a lot of railroad lines that when the interstate highway was built. I mean, well, start over real quick. I mean, you have these wagon trails that turn into railroad lines, and then the railroad lines, suddenly there's all these interstate highways and other highways that parallel the railroads, and it's just kind of this progression over time of how our transportation has just evolved. So, and to your point, yeah, it probably goes back to even before wagon. Well,
Yeah, when I was,
obviously
like I
it
said,
goes
I was
well
looking at
before
this
wagon
this
trails.
prehistoric map, and it just blew me
Yeah,
away because I mean they weren't exactly the same, but they were close enough that you kind of recognized the map.
yeah, no, I geek out on that kind of stuff. I think that's really interesting too.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, that kind of I think I've got through a lot of what I wanted to talk about from a history standpoint. I mean, Fisher's, um, you know, I I did notice I was looking at a nickel plate timetable from the 1950s, and there was about all they had, about all the railroad had, other than taverns shooting the place up. The railroad did have an agent there like into the 1950s, and there was a passing siding where trains could pass and things like that. But I mean, Fisher's wasn't a big stop on the railroad, but obviously, like I said, there was 6 passenger trains a day once upon a time, back in the late 1800s, and um, it's kind of I not to put a hat on and get political or anything, but man, if only we had commuter rail these days coming through here. I don't think anybody could imagine what kind of passenger rail traffic we could have on the line now, with Fisher's growing up the way it has. But
Well, I know when they were
certainly,
first talking about doing it on the nickel plate line, they were talking about putting uh, a surface uh, commuter, like light rail.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I was 100% against that because they were talking about having it cross 82nd Street, 96th Street, 106th Street, 116th Street, like every 20 minutes. I'm going, oh my God, we'd never get, and where I live,
nobody
I'd
would get
never get
anywhere.
anywhere.
Yeah,
I'm
for
going,
sure.
if you want to do that, move it over and put it between 69, the empty space there. They did that in Chicago. They do that in Denver, and you
Yeah,
don't go across the roads, where people are driving, which would have been a nightmare had they done that. But
there'd be a better way to do it for sure. I agree
yeah,
with that.
yeah.
So
Yeah, I was
build a lot of
terrified because
really
I'm sitting there going,
expensive
I won't be
bridges.
able to get out of my house. Because like I live really close to the rail, and I'm like, man, oh gosh, I'd never get out.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So yeah, but I think I could probably turn it over to Emily now just to talk about what we're doing with the nickel plate. And there's you know we're keeping history alive in a lot of ways too.
you are. It's a cool place. We've like I said, we've gone on two of your Valentine's Day trips, and it's a lot of fun. So
Were there any questions for Eric, or do you have the ability to take?
I you know we don't have any questions right
Okay,
now, so we can we can keep going. I'll ask questions or whatever as we go through,
perfect.
but I'm looking forward to this. So
So I think before I get totally into Nickel Plate Heritage Railroad and our history, people always want to know first, like how we got here.
yeah,
There's some, I think, history between when it stopped running as a freight railroad, where ITM, the Transportation Museum, came in, and then how Nickel Plate Heritage Railroad came into play. Um, so I won't even pretend to know the whole history there with the
right.
Transportation Museum. I believe they stopped running their last train in, correct me if I'm wrong, Eric, I think 2017. So the
Yeah,
line,
2017, 2018.
yeah.
I think
Um,
2017.
Back in 1995, the line was Norfolk Southern. It was bought by Hoosier Heritage Port Authority, and they bought 37 miles of track. So that ran from down there at the fairgrounds up to Tipton. They bought it for $1 million. Hoosier Heritage Port Authority is a government entity made up of representation from Hamilton County, Noblesville, and Fisher. So that's who currently still owns the line. They owned it during the Transportation Museum later days when they quit running, ceased to run and operate on the line. They opened it up for bids. Interesting enough, you can go to Hoosier Heritage Port Authority's website. Still, you can read every bid that was entered to operate on the line. Um, I always tell people we weren't um, really the winner of the bid, but we were the only one that had the same vision as they had at the same time. A lot of the other submissions were still wanting to run freight. They were wanting to run to Indianapolis. Um, and at that point, I think Fishers had pretty well decided they were done with that southern half of the line. So back in 2017, we were awarded the contract to be the operator on that line. We currently only operate up to Atlanta, Indiana. We'll talk a little bit about that in the presentation. Let's see.
All aboard the Nickel Plate Express.
I just saw those rail ones you get, those little carts that you're promoting now.
Season, new adventure. Nickel Plate Express. I paid a lot of money to have that little video put together, so I'm going to use it everywhere I can.
Oh yeah, go ahead, play it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So Nickel Plate Heritage Railroad, we're a 501c3 nonprofit. We were founded back in 2017. They were running a little like art depot Arcadia Arts Initiative, I think is what it was called, out of our little Arcadia Depot. It's original to the nickel plate line back in early 2010s, 2015, when Hamilton County Tourism approached them, asked if they'd be interested in running train excursions. Tourism was really big and heavy into helping us write that contract and proposal. So little did they know that they were eventually going to be running a train as well. We offer immersive train excursions, pedal-powered rail bike tours, and hands-on education. The older and more experienced we get, the more comfortable we become, the more we're trying to lean into that education, community service piece. Back in a couple years ago, 2 years ago, we rewrote this mission and vision. I think Eric was instrumental in some of these words. And I should use this mission and vision more often than I do. So the Nickel Plate Heritage Railroad uses immersive experiences to celebrate the history of railroads and foster curiosity about the past, present, and future. And I think that future word is so important for where we're going. So, like I said, we started back in 2017, based on the Heritage Center in Arcadia. It was the line formerly ran by the Indiana Transportation Museum. In the fall of 2018 is when we finally got our train and our engines here. We brought in this covered wagon, the one that says 4214 that's in most of our pictures. That came over from another railroad, and we also brought in the Santa Fe high-level cars from Ohio. So for them, they got the contract for the line, they brought in the equipment, and then they started operating out of Atlanta, Indiana. Eric said you should get rid of it, Indiana. Everybody knows it's in Indiana. And I said, no, they don't. They think we're running out to Atlanta, Georgia.
Yeah.
So they did a lot of track work early on, about close to $500,000 worth of track work had to be done just to get it up to operation level between that 2017 and 2018. And they were just really focusing on Atlanta to Cicero. So that first year they ran just from Atlanta to Cicero. It was a fantastic fall. They sold out quite a few trains. But then obviously COVID eventually happened, which was really hard on us. So 2019, we moved into Noblesville. Um, at the time, this beautiful Hobbs station wasn't done yet. They were
Now you've
boarding.
got Hobbs as a station. Hobbs is the town is a little
Yeah,
bitty dinky town near Tipton. Is
the
that?
south side of
Yep.
Tipton, like not even, I think like there's a four-way stop there, and if you blink, you're gone.
Yeah.
So
Yep. There's not
the
much to Hobbs.
station originally came from Hobbs back in the 1970s, that the Transportation Museum moved it to Forest Park. So
Okay.
we reference Hobbs a lot, and people are still ask us what we're talking about.
I
Um,
actually know where Hobbs is. I've been there. So yes. Yeah.
Yes. So they moved down to Forest Park in 2019. They had an excellent season. I think they had 20,000 passengers on the train. But they were boarding out of this muddy little mud hole. They had no facilities, no restrooms, no gift shop. It was like a tent in the mud at the time. They were still the city was still working to get the transportation museum out of the park, and then what came after that was all of the cleanup and the work they put into the park. They hired me in early 2022. I was really their first official executive director. They started with an executive director. I think she stayed about 3 months and went, wow, this is a lot of work, and I know nothing about trains. And then the poor little marketing intern gal ended up getting promoted to being the director, who oversaw the events but never oversaw the full organization. She did an amazing job for her age and her experience, and we still are huge fans of what she does. She's moved on to work for Duke Energy, but I was their first official executive director.
What
Um,
did you do before? Were you in the museum business or?
I worked for nonprofits for the last 20 years, fundraising, volunteer management, marketing, community engagement. I knew nothing about a train walking into here. I could tell you like Thomas the Tank Engine stuff. We were blessed to have this great crew that is just, they're so respectful and they're so good at educating me about things. And I had to learn quick, but I have a really great people that surround me, including Eric. So they never have made me feel less for not knowing some of these train things.
Well,
So.
Emily knows a lot more now than she'll let on to,
Oh, sure, I get that. So yeah.
and on top of that, she brought skills and experience that were, all due respect to everybody that has been involved in this organization from the very beginning. I mean, there was a point where this organization barely had two nickels to rub together, and everyone has elevated it in one way or another. And but Emily brought some really important nonprofit skills that now she has a nonprofit skills and knows trains, so
There you
it's
go.
the best of both worlds.
There you go.
Yep.
I have a fantastic board of directors. As a nonprofit, we've got a very small board right now of 8 people. They bring amazing knowledge to what we do. But I think more than anything, what I love about them is they support me without getting in the middle of everything. They trust me to run the organization, but they're there if I need anything. And I think that's allowed us to grow and blossom. Sometimes what my experience in nonprofits is you get a board that wants to help make every single little decision and you get stagnant. Um, and I think me coming in, not having a training background, I was able to look at it differently than the Transportation Museum or differently than somebody who was just so stuck on trains or history. I love the entertainment aspect that we do, or the memories we make. So I think I just brought a different viewpoint to it, which has worked well so far. So, um, June of 2022, our station at Forest Park officially opened. It was a $1.7 million investment by the city of Noblesville when Mayor Jensen was elected. That was the first thing on his agenda that he approved was getting this depot renovated, bathrooms, built a loading platform. We put in a gift shop. They cleaned up the yard. We went through months of cleanup. And actually, we just finally closed out the last of the monitoring wells from all of the groundwater problems that the Transportation Museum had left. So it's really exciting to see us moving past that. We've got a really great environmental plan that we work hand in hand with the city to make sure we've got plans if an oil spill happened or a fuel leak or anything. And they've been fantastic resources to help us.
Well, they got nice parking there too, which is easy, so which is a convenience.
It
Yeah.
is amazing. We are so blessed to be there and work with the city of Noblesville on all of this. I just can't say enough great things about what great partners they are. So then in May 2024, I think it was December 2023, I probably brought to the board my crazy idea of running rail bikes. Nobody in the state of Indiana was running them. It was starting to become popular throughout the United States. It had been popular in Europe for a while. In fact, when they delivered our rail bikes, the gentleman was from India and he said, I used to ride these to school. He's like, so they've been used for transportation modes in Europe quite a bit. So it was just kind of this like wild idea that let's do something to get families outdoor, physically active, give my conductors and engineers a break in the summer because we have a really small pool of qualified engineers and conductors, and not let Emily stress about the lack of air conditioning that works on the train. So we started with 8 bikes. Somebody did a TikTok video, an Instagram video that hit over 1 million views the first year. We were selling out weeks in advance. We were not prepared for how popular they were the first year. We had over 7,000 riders the first year. In 2025, we added 4 more bikes and had about 12,000 riders. I was just doing math earlier for a Port Authority meeting tomorrow. We've had about 7,000 riders so far this year. So, and we'll go into longer season this year. So,
So how
um,
long do you go?
we offer 2 different rides. One goes north to where the Davin Y is. It's a Y that used to go across the highway over to the power plant. It's about 3.5 miles north. They get off their bikes. They've got picnic tables, umbrellas, nice chairs. The seats on these bikes slide off and turn around. So while they're sitting and enjoying a snack, our staff turns all their seats, sends them back. It takes about 2 hours round trip. We go through 3 road grade crossings. Everything's guided with staff that gets them through every crossing safely, gets them to their halfway point safely, and gets them back. And then we do just a really short, we call it the White River Family Cruise. More than anything, we're trying to support downtown merchants and bring in economic development. Just that's one of the biggest pieces of us when we talk about our tourism. So it's probably a 10-minute bike ride. It's downhill the way there. It's a lie. You don't probably even need to touch your pedals. Then they get an hour to shop, eat. We run them a lot on Saturday mornings where they can go to the farmer's market and then they pedal back, which is uphill.
So they get to work
Um,
off their lunch or whatever.
yeah, yeah. We were so excited when they got delivered. We're like, oh, let's let's take a bike and go down to Sid's and test it out. And we ate big old cheeseburgers and then had to get back on that bike. We learned quick. So,
So how
um,
long through the year do you run that?
so rail bikes previous years have kind of ran from April till mid-October. They kind of slow down because in October we'd rather run our train on the weekends.
Right.
This year's a little bit different. We're really excited. We're going to be launching nickel plate Holiday Lights rail bikes. So they will start running mid-November through January. It'll take the White River family cruise trip. So they'll start in Forest Park out of Santa's house. There'll be fire pits, s'mores, hot chocolate. Board our lighted up rail bikes with Christmas lights. Travel into downtown Noblesville, including going over or under an 80-foot lighted tunnel over one of the bridges into downtown, where we'll give them some hot chocolate and cookies, turn their bikes, and send them on back. So that'll run till January.
Wow.
Yeah. And at the same time, we'll be running our Christmas trains northbound so we can run both ways.
Oh,
And
so you'll go north with the trains and south with the bikes?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So we're really excited to see how those Christmas lights turn out. We're working with the city on really engaging Forest Park as a Christmas light destination for the year. I think it'll be a really fun way for families to experience Christmas lights in Noblesville. So well, those will start soon. We haven't even posted anything yet on social media about it. So
Very cool. Well, you just
Breaking
did.
news.
yes. So that really does make now like rail bikes and April through January experience. With when I started, we were really seasonal. We were running the train maybe February, March, April, and then a few caboose rides in the summer, and then nothing again till the fall. So, with really becoming more of a year-round attraction, we're able to get a few more grants from tourism, but we're also able to add in full-time staff instead of working with the part-time seasonal staff we have been. So, we were just able to hire two new full-time event leads that'll help run all of these and be here year round, which will make my life a little bit easier.
There you go.
Yeah. So, so then we kind of branch off into our brands. So we're Nickel Plate Heritage Railroad operating Nickel Plate Rail Bikes and Nickel Plate Express. So when we talk about the train, we typically call it Nickel Plate Express. It runs typically the cooler months. We put all brand new AC on it last year. But I always like think about if you had no power at your house and it was 90 degrees out and you all of a sudden turn it on, it's going to take a long time to cool off.
Right.
And that's the struggle with this train. There's no power through the week. It's powered by a generator. It's a brand new generator, which works beautiful on the weekends when I need it. But it just takes a long time to cool off. The windows don't open. It's stainless steel.
It's a
So we
big
just
metal box.
yeah. I walked in there last week and it was over 100 degrees in there. So we just kind of put it away for the summer and really focus in on the rail bikes and then running through those cooler months. So we've got a lot of really fun fall things coming up, including Oktoberfest is always one of my favorites. Bourbon and Blues, we just booked a really great blues band that'll play out on the platform. Um, we just sold out our Taste of Italy, where we're using Matteo's for a full Italian dinner wine and a wine tasting on board. Cider and supper, where you can get a different a cider flight, and a local farm to table barbecue dinner. And our murder mysteries are always really popular. In fact, we're going to do a 1920s New Year's Eve murder mystery this year, which will be a lot of fun.
Oh, very
Uh,
fun.
yeah. So, I'm going to back up and keep talking about the train a little bit because that's the fun historic piece. We operate four passenger coaches. They're 1956 Santa Fe bi-level trains. They used to travel from Chicago to Los Angeles. Then I think 70s or so, we call it Amtrak. Amtrak started running those. Then they went over to Cincinnati dinner train where they ran them a little bit. They finally, I think, said we've had enough with dealing with this AC problems, where they then sent them to us. They can seat up to 250 people. We have a dining car, which is my favorite car. It's got that cool, like vintage vibe. Is probably where you've sat for
Yeah.
Valentine's Day. And then we've got a lounge car that's got tables, and then two coach cars. And then we
That's
also,
like a double decker.
yeah, all the seating is upstairs.
Hmm.
Working with some contractors this year on some new toilets, which I'm really excited about. Whoever thought you'd be excited about toilets?
Important.
Um, the trains when they traveled back then, dumped everything on the tracks. So when you flush the toilet, it just dumped straight onto the tracks. We're not necessarily allowed to do that anymore, especially in Hamilton County. So they early on when they bought the train and we started running, they put in like I call it a porta potty in the train.
Right.
We're working on putting in some things that actually have some running water and will really scale up our train. Putting in new carpeting in two cars this fall, putting in new seating into one of our coach cars. So anytime we sell a sponsorship, I really try to tell that sponsor, like, you're investing right back into this train car and keeping the history alive in it. So we just keep trying to find new ways to upgrade it and make it a better experience for everybody that rides. So it's exciting to see it grow and continue to be
Yeah.
preserved. So we think we have one more payment left on purchasing the Monon caboose, the little red caboose that we run. I love that one as a community engagement tool. So, like this Thursday, we'll be running up at the Arcadia Farmers Market. We run short little $5 rides. It's accessible to anybody that wants an experience. I think that's so important for us. I always say I was a single mom for 10 years. I could not have afforded our Reindeer Express, but a $5 caboose ride would have still given my son an experience. And I
On
think
the train. Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
so we use those a lot. We'll do a community day that we'll do $5 rides. And I always like $5 doesn't even cover my fuel, but it's part of who we are as a nonprofit. I think it's
Right.
important.
Yeah, I would imagine the fuel is not cheap.
No, not right now. I think I got diesel fuel last week and it was like 4.55 a gallon. And we
And
typically
it doesn't get 25 miles a gallon, right?
no, and
No,
we
instead of
typically
miles
get
per gallon, it's
anywhere
more like
from
gallons per mile.
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Depends on what it's pulling, but we get anywhere from 200 to 1,000 gallons delivered at a time. So, yeah, it depends on what we're doing. That little caboose is lighter to fuel, but it's still heavy. One of the caveats we kind of were given when we won the contract to operate on the line was that all of our staff had to be paid. I think it was kind of after frustrations of working with the all volunteer organization. It was kind of one of these things where they wanted our organization to pay their staff so we could expect a level of professionalism you don't
Right.
always get with volunteers. I still think as a nonprofit, it's important as we think about our fund management to say, okay, our main roles are funded and paid, but how can we help kind of lift us up with volunteer help? Right now, that's using volunteers in our depot. I've got a great group of retired ladies that come in and they're happy to greet you and they're happy to help you find your seats and stuff. So um, I hope as we continue to grow and build the faith and trust that we've been working towards, that they'll allow us to add more volunteers into the organization. So part of our strategic plan that we launched last year really focused in on how are we impacting our community and building those relationships. When I started back in 2022, we had a great relationship with Noblesville, but not so much with those northern towns. I think they kind of felt a little bit forgotten about by us because we started there and then we just kind of headed south and didn't come back. So I've been working really hard on how we work and engage with them, whether those are $5 caboose rides during the farmers market whether those are donating caboose rides for Cicero's Lights Over Mortis. We really want to make sure we're an integral part of the community, and that as they're thinking about their community growth, they're thinking about how they can work us into that. So, one of the other things we started working on last year is doing a community day, which has been so fun. So we hosted our last one, our first one on September 20th last year. We kind of turned it into a touch a truck, train safety, tour the train, everything except for the caboose rides were free. And we had over 500 visitors last year. We will do another one September 13th, and we're really excited. We've been working really hard on bringing some other pieces of the railroad into it, like a junior conductor badge. We'll have Operation Lifesaver there this year that'll talk about train safety, and like just really pulling it into who we are, getting people on the train. The train doesn't move. We give out free food. They can sit in the dining car. They can have lunch with their family. But so often people just want to look inside the train, and this
Yeah.
gives them a great free chance. And then we've really been working with Noblesville schools to build out a curriculum. Last year, we worked with the kindergarten and first grades out of Noblesville schools. They helped me develop a curriculum to the Indiana state standards, to offer field trips to them. And we had over 2,000 youth in the spring and fall ride the train for a field trip. Those are always a fun day. And then I would be remiss not to talk a little bit about the economic and tourism impact. I always try to drive home that we're bringing tourism into Hamilton County. So we've had over 100,000 visitors, and I probably need to relook at that number since our launch in late 2018. And those 32,000 guests for, they should say 35, generated over $2.3 million in direct visitor spending last year. Our staffing is growing, but right now we have 3 full-time employees, 38 part-time seasonal team members, and 8 to 10 volunteers. So we work really hard at every time we buy something for the train, can we buy it locally first? Like our cookies this year, we need 17,000 cookies for Christmas. Will come from a local baker up in Arcadia, or most of the merch in our gift shop have been made by local artists here. So we work really hard to make sure that even the money we're spending goes right back into this community. And talked a little bit more about our strategic plan. We just really focus on those 3 things. We have done amazing developing ticket sales as an organization, and we are thriving and living off of ticket sales. We still need to find a better route in fundraising. I'm so busy with the programming side, it's hard for me to get out and do the fundraising. I think that we need to live off of. Like every nonprofit should have multiple streams of income, fundraising, ticket sales, grants, and we need to get better. And that's a big part of our strategic plan about how we're bringing in money to support and sustain the organization. And then programming, like we really just want to continue thinking about what it is we offer, how do we offer it, how are we sharing our message. I always preach to our on board staff, like it's so important that even if you just take 2 minutes to share with our customers that they're supporting a nonprofit by purchasing tickets that day. Their ticket money goes straight into preserving and protecting the rail line. So I think as we think about our programming and just things that we say and how we operate, to just really drive home what we are. We're not an amusement park. We're a for-profit or a nonprofit dedicated to keeping that rail line alive. Every organization probably has a giant capital improvement priority list. And this is like just a small section of ours. But if I was picking the biggest thing out of here, we are not handicapped accessible. We have a beautiful depot and a bathroom, and outside they've built a beautiful ramp to get in. But once you get to that train, you're stuck.
Those stairs are tight.
Yeah.
We were following a gentleman that was 95
Oh
up and
gosh.
down those stairs. and I was so worried for him, but he did good, man. He, it was like his kids were about to have a stroke,
Yes.
but he did just, it is until you've gone up and down them, you don't really know, but they're not
Takes some
handicap
time.
accessible.
I
So yeah,
know. When you ask what I did before, I was in nonprofits, but what I did was I was the director of community engagement for a nonprofit that built wheelchair ramps for people to get out of their homes.
yeah.
Accessibility was such a big thing for me. And so it breaks my heart to know, especially because I feel like that's a core audience, the older generation that want to ride the train and remember what it was like when they were younger, or reminisce with their grandkids. Um, we've looked at every option you can on those double deckers and
I don't
it
know how you do it.
yeah, I think where we have ended up is we're just gonna have to purchase a car.
What about does it have stairs on the top, in the front and the back?
So almost all of them have the stairwell in the middle of the train car.
Okay,
The last car on our consist is we call it it's the reporter lounge, but they also would call it the transition car. So it does have stairs at heading down to a single level. Um, so if it was on a larger consist, they could then add a single level train car with it and be even. So ideally what we would do, one of the other things we get asked for all the time is an open air car. French Lick runs them. Fort Wayne has a couple ones that they've modified. Is have something built that's open air, that's handicapped accessible, and put it at the end where that transition car is.
would there be any opportunity on one car to put a power, like a elevator lift in
I've
where the
thought
stairs
about
get
that one
to?
as well.
Huh?
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, without,
yeah.
because you're ruining the true historical about it. But if you don't do all of them, if you have one on the entire train that maybe they can access and then get where they want to go. But I
I
don't
think
know.
it'd require a lot of modification of that train because then you think about it, yeah, we got them on there, but now there's no bathroom they can go to.
Okay, yeah,
You know, we've talked about renovating some of the lower levels into something that was accessible. As somebody who worked diligently on accessibility, I just can't bring myself to separate them.
right.
Like just because you can't get up those stairs, you're going to sit down below where you're probably not going to get the same service or, experience that those people upstairs are doing. It's probably, if you were asking me, my number one capital improvement priority. It's that, and it's just continuing to invest back in our rails.
Yeah,
I always like to tell people we're operating on 12.4 miles of rails. There's 3,000 ties per mile, and it costs right now between 150 and $175 per tie to redo. Um, so to keep our FRA minimum standards, we have to have every third tie in good working order. We just replaced $200,000 worth of ties this summer, which was just over 1,000 ties. As a small nonprofit, it eats your budget. It's
yeah.
really hard. But if I don't have good rails, one, I'm not putting passengers on there. And two, it's just going to continue becoming a problem for us. So it's always the first thing on my list to say nobody really wants to do track work, but we have to keep
Maybe
it.
you can sell ties where people put their name on them or
I
something.
have
So
considered that $150 donation, and your tie is good for 50 years.
yeah,
Exactly.
That's
The
really a
buy the buy a
small,
tie program. There you
yeah,
go.
I have
Yeah.
truly considered it. And
then you have a
so,
you have a plaque with the people's names and a picture of their tie.
yeah, they could put a plaque on there, and then you can ride the rail bike and find your tie. I love
Yeah,
it. Um, we've also been working with the city of Tipton and the Port Authority to start thinking about activating that piece of rail line that runs from County Line Road up to State Road 28. Um, we can run a rail bike anywhere, and that's the beauty of rail bikes. They're running all the way across the United States on abandoned rails. All I needed is it to hold its gauge enough that I can put a rail bike through it. So we'll be running rail bikes during their Tipton Pork Festival this year up in Tipton, and it's just a short ride. I'm not making anyone ride from Tipton to Noblesville. you'll just kind of go, it's about a 10 to 15 minute ride one way and then back. So just to kind of use the rails, build up some excitement, and start showing a presence up there. But that rail line needs over $1 million worth of work to even get it up to par to be able to bring a train. That's the ultimate goal. But I want the city of Tipton to kind of lead with what their vision is there. Um, and I would not be a nonprofit director if I didn't say how you can help. Hey, look, there's an adopt a tie option here.
There you go.
I love putting people's names on it, though. You just, a little plaque and a couple of nails, and you're good to go.
And you
Yeah,
could also put like a plaque in the term, your
Yeah.
Hobbs terminal or whatever that had, the person's name next to, to tie number whatever.
it would be cool to like almost do like a map of the track and then we could
Yeah.
like name the ties
And
and
people will pay to have their name and get some cred for it.
absolutely. Yeah. So, you could always donate to our annual fund. That always goes directly back into preserving and protecting the track and the train, and like the vintage engines that we run. We're running one of the only GP7s, Eric,
Yeah.
left from the nickel plate line. Thanks. We have a GP7 and a GP9, and I always get the two mixed up. You
Yeah,
can.
it actually is. It's kind of cool. It's painted up in Nickel Plate Road, but it's not it's not something that came from another part of the country. It actually ran on this railroad
That's
Yeah.
cool.
throughout most of its career. So
It sure did. It's one of the last remaining ones and it just ran just north its whole career. So
yeah,
um and then again, we're always looking for volunteers. We're trying to build that pot up, especially during the fall and holiday season. Um, Greeting people. We bring in about 17,000 people during mid-November through December. So having staff ready and volunteers that are happy to give a smiling face are really important.
Well, they're a lot of fun to ride on too because I mean, like I said, we did it the first time. Not this, the first time was a year ago. Okay. And we just had a blast. It was like,
Yeah.
I grew up in, my grandparents lived in Arcadia after they moved from Fishers and we farmed all that stuff. So I've been on these roads my whole life and to see things from the rail rather than from 19 or whatever was a lot of fun just to the different perspectives and, to see things from the backside. Right. So
I,
yeah,
I
always
find
through
it
Cicero was
fascinating.
interesting, huh?
It's really interesting. We'll get a lot of complaints that all they saw were cornfields, and I'm always like, I'm not really sure what you thought you were going to see in Indiana. But yeah, to see the fields and see there's a little swampy area the rail bikes go through, and just things that you don't normally
Well,
see.
that swampy area right there, just around Cicero,
Mm-hmm.
that was a oh, now I'm drawing a blank. Peat moss farm, and
Yep.
they pulled a lot of peat moss out of there, and that ground is so soft and so wet. I have seen a lot of tractors just disappear out there.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. It's
Also,
one
you
of
see them
the
down to their axles, and if they don't get them out in a hurry,
best.
they're no longer they're part of the history forever.
yeah. I
Yeah.
kind of beg to differ on some of the comments about scenery because I think on the train, I mean, you get to see areas, especially like around Morse Reservoir and
Yeah,
the crossing, the bridge there. I mean, there's a lot there that you don't get to see from the highway,
And
and
exactly.
I think
but yes, it is Indiana. You are probably going to see cornfields.
I know.
That's the way it is.
It's
So
Well, we hope
pretty
so. Otherwise, we're all going to get really,
quintessential.
really hungry.
Yeah.
yeah,
It's very quintessential and quaint Indiana, I think.
Yeah.
I've rode a lot of other trains in Indiana and none of them are going through the cute little small towns we go through. I find it fascinating to see into people's backyards.
Right, I do too.
It's like it's pretty interesting. There's a squirrel housing. They've created a whole community as along the side of the tracks in Cicero. It's pretty interesting some of
Well,
it.
one thing too is you're seeing a very different perspective because when you're on that second floor of that train, you're up higher looking down on things that
yeah,
you don't normally
Yeah.
see.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's a unique view
Hmm.
in a great way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. We repainted the Arcadia Depot this year. It looks beautiful. So it's always fun to point that out to passengers as we go by. It's original. I think it was built in the 1880s. It moved one block south by the town, but a really cool peek into history there. Have you been to the depot there, Jim?
No, I have not. I've just done the Valentine's, and I know we go up through like I think just a little north of Cicero and then come back, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So they've done a nice job in the depot up in Arcadia, with panels that talk about the county and town development, and
Very
what part
cool.
the railroad brought into it. It's open on like select occasions. We ran our caboose rides out of there all summer, so you checked in, we're able to tour the depot and hop on a caboose. So it's always a fun place to go.
Well,
Sure.
guys, I want to thank you for coming and sharing with us. This is a lot of fun, a lot of information. And if anyone's not been on one of these trains, I strongly recommend getting on one of your events because, like I said, we did it the first year and really liked it, so we came back the second year. So so it's a lot of fun. It's just it's a unique way to spend an afternoon or an evening.
It's a good way to turn off and unwind and feel history.
Yeah.
Absolutely, it is, and it's really unique to ride the train. Obviously, these cars from 1956 um, offers a great perspective and a lot of great events. Themed things that Emily and her team puts together. But I want to give another, just another endorsement to the rail bikes because there's something kind of cool about just you're sitting there open air pedaling down the right of way. I mean, you kind of there's a certain connection to the history of the line that you feel when you're on that rail bike and just kind of, going over the rail joints and the clickety clack that you're is right there in front of your feet. It's just it's a great way to kind of experience what it's all about as well.
Well,
Yes.
I think that, I think that's a lot of the things are no longer happening that used to happen. It's like
Yeah,
I grew up, and one of the things we used to do all the time as kids, we used to walk the rail tracks. Okay,
sure.
and so, the first time you walk across one of the bridges over a river, that's a wake up call. When you're looking at,
Yeah, we're not going to encourage anybody to do that.
yeah. But
No, no,
anyway,
no. Bad idea. Railroad
One of my
but
property.
employees can
Don't do
see
it.
you. She'll let me know.
I could get home from school about 40 minutes quicker by jumping off, this was in Noblesville, jumping off the bus at River Road on the railroad track and then take it across the cherry tree and then walk home. It was a lot faster than being one of the last people on the bus.
We're
So,
not going to hold that against you, though. It's
We
okay.
must have lived we must have lived close by then, Jim. I grew up on 171st Street.
oh yeah, I was 100 there. The farm that's at 161st and Cherry Tree that now there has like a uh, Victorian in the woods and a log cabin, but the white
Yep.
farmhouse, that was where I grew up.
Okay. I know exactly where that was.
Just
We
north of
were
Spencer's. We used to
yep.
farm about 2,000 acres around there. So basically all that ground,
Wow.
I was running tractors over it.
Is that all
A
Martin Marietta now?
lot of it is. So
Yeah, my
yeah,
husband worked for Martin Marietta, so
yeah.
yeah, I was right there where over by where the Chapmans live. So
So I watched everything go away. I mean, our farm in Fishers
yep.
was from 106th Street on the south, the railroad track to the west, Lantern Road on the other side of 69 to the east, and just south of 116th Street to the north. And the
Mm,
year I was born, 1957, they put 37 cut the farm in half, and then I was
Mhm.
10 when 69 came in. But I
wow.
mean, so we went from that one getting all developed. We moved up to Knowlesville and Arcadia. Arcadia still pretty much looks the same, but the rest of them,
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
interesting. I lived on 116th Street where Archer's, just over where Archer's was until
yeah.
in second grade, and then we moved to Noblesville.
Well,
So
there you go.
we've
So
had the same
we
paths.
follow the same trail. Yeah.
Yeah, well, very cool. Thanks for
Well,
having us
thanks guys for
tonight.
sharing.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jim.
This video I'll get over to you when I can, and then we'll have it'll be on Facebook for a month.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Great.
Thank
Great.
you. Bye bye.
All right. Thank
Bye.
you.